Hey guys, it's M. As you can see in the title, I'm a big Xcom fan. I never played any turn-based strategy games till that one, and it was so good it made me relatively like the genre, although I've never played another one afterwards. That's until UnderHive Wars, which I only really picked up because I vaguely remember Total Biscuit's video talking about it, and the gameplay looked kind of similar to Xcom. So, I got the game, and I feel there's a bit to talk about. Most YouTubers would probably want to talk about the story in any other game, but there's not really too much to talk about here. This is gonna be the part where I bitch about the story for a while. So if you want to skip to when I talk about gameplay, cut to this time above. It's functionally just a story about a bunch of games fighting each other till the bigger gang comes in and they all have to fight them together. What I will point out is if you played the other Necromunda game, you've probably noticed a stark contrast in cutscenes. Just so you're aware, here's a cutscene from the other Necromunda game.
Not talk. Who are you working for? Where's the silver talon?
You're a dead woman. Any moment now.
And here's one from this game.
Spit it out.
Some Goliaths heading this way. Rowdy boys, I think. But if we stay quiet, they'll miss us.
We need him gone. We're meeting our guide here.
There's a very big difference in where the budget went. But then again, the voice actors they have in UnderHive Wars are not good. I have nothing against them or anything, but they just don't fit. I'm not a Warhammer lore god or anything, but from what I understand, the UnderHive's this nasty place where it's just gangs and disease, and this is what the leftovers are from what the Space Marines are doing. If you imagine what those people would sound like, they probably wouldn't sound like normal, average, everyday people, which Hired Gun handled pretty well, as the main character had this, for lack of better words, dirty, rough, grungy British accent. It's probably one of my favorite performances in games I can think of. And everyone else in that game, while not as strong, follows the same kind of direction, except for a few nobles or higher up characters, which you would expect to sound like normal people. In UnderHive Wars, it kinda sounds like you could run into these people if you went to your nearby Staples. What they sound like doesn't match what they look like at all. And it wouldn't be so bad if they at least had emotion in their dialogue, but they don't. Tasara, the main lead, sounds like she's trying, but she's not hitting the mark. The Goliath leader sounds like a guy trying to LARP as a Goliath leader, and Flint sounds like a normal guy, but for him at least that kinda makes sense. This wouldn't annoy me so much if the cutscenes look bad, but it looks like this is where 80% of the budget went, so it's kind of annoying. This isn't what I imagined starting this video talking about, but I needed some place to vent about it because it needed to be said. Anyways, let's talk about the combat. The thing 90% of people care about when they buy a turn-based game. The combat in this game is unique, to say the least. So in this game you have MP points and AP points. These affect how you move. Unlike Xcom where you move, you do a single thing and then your turn ends. In this, your turn doesn't end until you use both of those points. MP is move points. As you can imagine, these affect how far you can move. And AP is action points, and these are for other actions like attacks, applying buffs, and debuffs. Most things that aren't just walking around. And this leads to a lot of unique scenarios that I think only this game has. For instance, you have a lot of move points. You could cover a good amount of distance if you really wanted to, leading to a lot of times where you or an enemy unit gets into cover kind of close to each other, and you're not really safe. Because the other thing is, shooting doesn't immediately end your turn. Since it only ends when you're out of both points, this leads to turns where you or your enemy get shot, and then the opposing side just immediately runs to the other side of the map afterwards. Stuff like that really used to piss me off, but when you notice that you and the enemy can do it, it's generally not that bad, and it makes combat unique. But the side effect of all this choice in your actions makes games insanely long. 4 rounds in this game is 30 minutes. You're gonna want to get comfortable if you're playing this. Anyways, let's talk about another thing that makes the combat unique. Every unit in this game feels fucking broken. There's 5 different roles. I don't know what their exact names are, so let's just call them heavy, melee, support, AoE, and sniper. All of these units have something absolutely broken about them, whether in their attacks or debuffs. And I don't mean just one thing per class. I mean they have multiple insane things that they can do. For instance, the heavy has one attack where he hits you for 3 turns of damage. If you've played any turn-based game, you'd understand why this ability in itself is fucking insane. Let alone, heavies are if not the second, third highest damage dealing units in this game in one turn. Unless they miss, they'll practically kill any unit below 70%. And if it doesn't kill you, you're practically not going to have any health to work with after this attack lands. Then we move over to melee units, who have the ability to hit you 2 times. Now this doesn't sound so bad until you notice that these units do so much damage. If one of these 2 hits crits you, you're probably dying in 1 turn. let alone melee units in this game are a pain in the ass. If you get hit by one, it has a chance to stun you, which if you're stunned you need to sacrifice MP at the start of the turn to move again. But then you're in a state called engaged, so to disengage it costs MP and AP to break out of it. They're fucking terrifying because either they insta-kill you, or they hit you once, do half of your health, and then you have to hope your nearby units are in Overwatch because they'll just chase you down and hit you again. And you know the funny thing about both of the moves I just described to you? They don't have a cooldown! The one-shot ability and the 3 turns of damage ability don't have any cooldown at all. And just think I'm only talking about 2 classes. I'm not even gonna get into the other 3. And then there's debuffs. Most turn-based games, the buffs and debuffs last a turn, maybe 2 turns. Some abilities in here last till the end of the game. And some of these aren't exactly small debuffs either. For example, the sniper has an ability called grapnel shot. If it hits you, it permanently increases the cost of Overwatch by 100% for the rest of the game. Meaning you better play it like XCOM and expect Overwatch to just be at the end of your turn, because in any other case, you're literally not going to be able to use it. And then there's Safeguard, which is the most insane ability I think I've ever seen in any game. So basically, Safeguard causes an aura around your leader unit, and it costs 100% more AP points to fire on any unit in its range. This ability by itself makes near every special ability unusable, because the price to fire is so high. For example, if I wanted to use my triple shot ability to someone in the range of this move, it would cost 100 AP. For reference, you can't get 100 AP in this game. And keep in mind, these are just 2 examples from the 20 or so I can choose from. You'd think with all these abilities, the computers would be insane to go against. That's what you think, right? To put it bluntly, the computers in this game aren't exactly fun to fight against. To compare to XCOM again, enemies in XCOM will use all of their tricks to get you. It keeps the game interesting enough to the point where no 2 playthroughs will be exactly the same, even if you hypothetically had the same missions every game. But games in UnderHive War feel very similar to each other if you're fighting bots, which is very disappointing. Because with all of these abilities and the fact that this game can have 3-way fights, it had potential to have great PvE content. But if you've played it, you know most times the computers will just go for the most simple attack plan of just going out in plain sight and shooting you, or they just play like assholes and hide in corners spamming Overwatch. They hardly ever use any of their special attacks, which brings me to another point. This game isn't hard. In a tactical game, if the AI isn't smart, it kinda kills a lot of fun of it. I've played more custom gang mode than the story mode, and after I learned how to properly play the game, I never really felt in danger of having any of my units die. This is in stark contrast to XCOM, where it feels like the start of the game is a nigh unwinnable hell in certain situations. This is probably why 99% of UnderHive matches put a restriction like a 6-turn timer or something similar, because otherwise, you would just blow through the game. Anyways, let's talk about the custom gang mode. Since in the story, there isn't really too much to talk about other than gameplay. Custom gang mode is very reminiscent to making your army in XCOM, though the amount of items you can use to customize them with here is significantly lower, meaning you're not going to make super unique, compelling characters. Well, that's except for the female units that they made dummy thick for no reason. But they immediately make up for this with a skill system, which I think is a small bit more fun than XCOM's. When you finish a mission, you get skill points, and with these skill points, you can raise their stats or choose their specific skills. There's the class-specific skills, then there's the level-up related skills for every rank your character hits, and then there's a few faction-specific perks that you can choose. It's a neat system, and for how overpowered a lot of the skills are, I find myself using a lot more of them than I did in XCOM, where it feels like once you get the endgame ones, they're mainly the only viable ones. My main issue is I wish there were more class-specific skills, as a lot of the rank up ones apply buffs or debuffs or have very specific uses, which isn't exactly a bad thing. I just wish that maybe some of the abilities were toned down power-wise in exchange for more of them. Then there's a few little things like selling items you get from missions to the store so you can buy custom armors that show up on your character, or items to buff them mid-game. Fun little things like this help fill out the experience. And as a quick touch up on an early point, you can also have reserve teams. So there you can make your main gang and then keep other units on the side. Although, I don't really think there's a reason for this. This isn't like XCOM where if a unit goes down, they'll just die for the rest of the game. If you lose a unit, they come right back afterwards. So your reserve team won't ever really get used, which means I don't really understand why the mechanic's there. And that's all on top of the fact of, as I said earlier, the computers are really dumb and games are pretty easy. So at most, if you're playing really bad, you might have one unit go down. The simple fix to this would just be to have something like the carrier defense missions in XCOM where all your units can come out at the same same time, but to my knowledge, there's nothing like this in the game. So having 10 bonus slots for other units doesn't really make sense to me, because they're pretty much just bench warmers. There also happens to be PvP for custom gangs. As you've heard me say, 4 rounds of this game with computers is 30 minutes long. While I can imagine it being fun to fight an actual smart opponent with all these mechanics, I don't feel like spending 2 months to finish one match, so I can't tell you much about that side of the game, other than the fact that I've always noticed there are people on PlayStation, which is surprising for how old this game is. But then we get onto the mechanic I was wanting to talk about because of how absolutely broken it is. You see, in this game, your gun is equipped to your character. It's not like Xcom where you research an upgrade and every class gets an upgraded version of their own weapon. It's a unique equip for every unit. So if your character or any character goes down in this game, you can get looted for equipment. And this equipment doesn't magically come back for you or your enemies, meaning you have to equip your guys with new stuff if they lose anything. It's the price of losing. You lose good stuff and you have to pay for it. Since your teammates can't seem to permanently die, this seems like a fair trade. The problem is, this affects the computers too. So if you beat them one game and take all their guns and fight them soon after that, there's a good chance the enemy team won't have any guns at all. And since you need guns for damage skills and they can't even use those, you're pretty much gonna shit on the enemy team for free. It's so cartoonishly stupid for game balancing. I was convinced it was a glitch until I noticed it a second time when a single unit I beat before didn't seem to restock. So while his entire team had guns, he just had his fists. It's mostly a PvE thing, so it's not a horrendous problem. Just the enemy team will be so laughably weak, you're pretty much wasting your time as you can kill all of them in a few seconds. Before we wrap up, let me bring up a few things I couldn't figure out where to fit in this video. The animation's kinda janky. Due to all the mechanics, I can get past it, but I'd be lying if I said 50% of them didn't look on the weaker side. Augments are a thing in this game, but due to how easy it is, I've never felt any need to use them. They're DLC factions, but since there are only 6 faction special perks in this game and no unique faction classes, you're paying for skins practically. Nice looking skins, but skins regardless. Healing is crazy in this game because you heal like 50% on base, and if you raise a certain stat that helps healing go up, you get like 70 or 80% back. Overall, UnderHive War is a good game. It's not the next immaculate turn-based game that swept the industry off of its feet, but it's still decent if you want to try something different from the rest. Since I've never really seen another turn-based game like it, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. It does a lot of cool, unique things, but a lot of them just kind of happen to be underbaked. If this game lived up to the potential I can see in it, I think it would be an 8 or a 9, but that's not what we got. If you see it on sale, I'd give it a try, but I wouldn't go out of my way to play it or search it down. And with all that out of the way, I want to know what you guys think. I love talking to you guys in the comments, and with that, I've been out. And I am out.